have you heard of anything as to what Brian's motive would have been for these murders?
Well, no, nobody's really. Some people say like, oh, he was obsessed with one of the girls. They say he was obsessed with Maddie Mogan, or he was obsessed with Katie Gonzalez. No, nobody seems to think that it had anything to do with Ethan Chapin or Xana Kernodle. It's just that they happened to be in the house. Or some people though think he was obsessed with all of them because they um, seem to have the perfect existence, the perfect uh, all-American life ahead of them. And Brian Koberger did not. He was an outsider, periphery kind of guy who struggled throughout life, struggled to fit in, struggled with relationships, struggled with women, struggled. He tried to be in law enforcement, struggled with that. He didn't get the job at some internship or whatever. He was you know, he had personality problems and difficulty with all kinds of things, lots of depression. He had what's called visual snow, at least based on his postings about it as a teenager, which is a neurologically based sort of visual thing that happens where it's like things are foggy and fuzzy and mess with you, and you just like imagine yourself looking through the dirty window and you're like, ew, that's what the world looks like out there. And then you clean the window and everything's clear. Well, he was looking through the dirty window, um, like that's a difficult place to be because nothing you seem detached from everything, and he felt detached. He felt like an outsider. He struggled with understanding what life was. He saw us all as just kind of bags of meat wearing clothing, and in some existential way that's really true. When you can get far into your head, you're like, what does any of this even mean? Like, oh, here I am moving my arm. Well, like, he was in that trip, like where it's like, I don't know what anything means anymore. And he was a difficult person, or difficult. It was difficult to live as him, is what I'm saying. And so some people say that he might have just lost it because they seem to have everything, these four kids, and others say he was obsessed with one of them, right? But my feeling is he fits the stereotype of certain types of serial killer, of mass murderers or serial killers or whatever. And you could say, well, it's not a serial killer; it's his first killings. Okay, but he killed four at once. But my and if he hadn't gotten caught, if it was him and he hadn't gotten caught, he would do it again. But my feeling is that he fits the sort of pattern of what's called a revenge killer. You could say, like, there was nothing that he was really avenging or getting revenge for based on common standards of revenge. But those people, their psyche is such that, like, if you slight them, they can't get over it. They obsess. It swirls in their mind. They think about it constantly. Somebody's insulted you before and you tripped out about it for a day and a half or whatever. You're like, God, that person pissed me off. Well, like a revenge killer sort of, it could be the slightest thing. It could be like, hey, I like your blouse. And then she just looks at you like you're a creep and walks away. And then you think that effing, and you start tripping on it, like, and it's kind of like that kind of thing where it's like we might like that they might not have even known whatever his target was, whoever his target was might not have even known that they'd ever met him before, but they could have slighted him in a grocery store. They could have slighted him at the coffee shop. They could have slighted him by not smiling at him, whatever his trip was. And then it builds and builds and builds, and the pressure builds and builds and builds, and it's just um, uh, and he just thought one day, I got to take care of this. And uh, so to me, I don't think necessarily, I mean, it'll be interesting to find out if we ever do, but I don't think necessarily it's about who was he obsessed with. I think it's about why would he kill any of these people anyway? And I think it's because he's that revenge killer type and he has Night Stalker patterns as well, which is the uh, staying up till all hours, doing he's admittedly his alibi is that he was taking a long his habit was to take long drives at night. And so he was out driving that night. His alibi is that I was out driving for hours looking at the moon and stars and whatever. And but night stalkers do that. They take long drives at night by themselves to quell the chaos that's in their mind. It's a way of it's a way of just calming the thing that's brewing. It's also a way of hunting, right? It's like you can look up that stuff and read about it in depth, but to me, he fits those kinds of. If it's him, he fits those things: Night Stalker, Revenge Killer, um, that kind of stuff. Yeah, and so I think it's like, who knows? What is the answer to why people kill? And individual, each cold-blooded murderer is different, but um, to me, that's what it's about. It's not like it could have been it could have been Ethan, it could have been Xana, it could have been Maddie, it could have been Kaylee, but it looks like it was probably Maddie or Kaylee because he went there first. And some people speculate that it was Maddie. If he was just obsessed with one of the girls, if it had nothing to do with revenge or whatever, but if he was obsessed with one and his brain twisted to the point where he thought, okay, well, I can't have her, so I'll kill her or whatever. It looks like it was, it makes sense that it was Maddie. It's like Maddie is like, they're all attractive Americana types or whatever, but Maddie was like sort of angelic and radiating and in a stereotypical American beauty sort of way, was like, um, you know, a very attractive, to somebody like Brian Koberger, attractive, sexual, um, somebody who could model things like that. And they were all attractive, but like Maddie would be the one that somebody would be obsessed with in that way, in that stereotypical way. But who knows? I mean, who knows?
Mm-hmm.
And based on Koberger's patterns, though, I say that as well. Like he had a long history of coming on to girls, wanting to have like interactions with them, and then pushing him away and stuff. And it's likely that based on his stereotypical behavior toward women, that he also would have been stereotypically attracted to the stereotypical beauty, which was Maddie. You know what I'm saying? Like based on his patterns or whatever. But who knows?
Earlier, I had mentioned how I've watched a lot of YouTube videos surrounding this case, and I was wondering if you could comment on maybe the the downsides, or maybe if there are any benefits to a lot of people covering this case who maybe haven't been there themselves, but you see a lot of people on YouTube maybe giving alternative theories on what happened and giving their own take on it. And I know in the book you had mentioned about something that happened to one of the gentlemen that was on the video camera footage of the two girls while they were getting food that night, and how he was, people thought that maybe he had something to do with it. He didn't.
Yeah.
He had to go into hiding. So have you seen things on social media just take it way, way too far?
Yeah, the social media hype is such that like people have learned that if they just say stuff, then their channel grows. There were TikTok channels and YouTube channels and whatever built on this case alone, that have TikTok has millions of followers based on their coverage of this case. So they got to say stuff, right? So then they go, oh, today I'm going to talk about what I thought. Today I'm going to talk about what this might mean. Today I'm going to talk about whatever that might mean, right? And in the initial days of the case, yeah, it wreaked havoc on the lives of people who we now know had nothing to do with this case. Like Maddie and Kaylee were walking home from the bar with a guy named Jack, and they stopped at a food truck, and the food truck happened to have a live Twitch stream, and Jack is on the stream with Maddie and Kaylee, and it's cold out. It's 32 degrees or whatever it was that night. I think it was 32, and the freezing point. And Jack pulls his hood up, and they start calling him Hoodie Guy. Hoodie Guy. I think it was Hoodie Guy. You can see he pulls his hood up because he knows the camera's there, so he pulls the hood up. Is what they say. Like, no, man, it's cold out. But what they said on the internet was he could tell the cameras are there. He pulls his hood up, and then he's the last to see them alive because after the food truck, they go home and they get murdered an hour and a half later or whatever. Okay, that's what people say. That's what they start saying. And now people are talking about Jack. And now mainstream media is talking about Jack because social media is. So now you got people on News Nation, you got people on whatever going, is Jack blah blah the killer of these girls? We look into that tonight on, whatever. And you're like, what? Like this guy, like they're only doing that because people on TikTok were talking about it. And now you got mainstream media talking about this guy. This guy's getting death threats. Everybody's doxing his family addresses. They got a cabin. Everybody knows where that is. They're putting all the phone numbers out. Jack has to go into hiding because people are like saying Jack's the murderer. The same thing happened with a professor at the university. The same thing happened with Kaylee's boyfriend. The same thing happened with just all kinds of people calling these people murderers, and all kinds of people. I mean, we're talking millions of people. So, like some of these people, their names will never not be associated with this case. If you Google that name, it's gonna be like best known for being accused of murdering, whatever, right? And that's a lot to live with. So it wreaked havoc, it ruined lives for sure. Um, the social media uh, fire around this stuff was insane. It was crazy, and yeah, lots of people's lives were ruined. And so my feeling is like it didn't help this case necessarily, but it kept it in the light. It kept it in the light. So the police still had the social media buzz led to a lot of the pressure on the police to solve the case, right? Which is sometimes good. You want people, you want eyeballs on your case. If you're the family of the victims, you want people talking about it. It's just you want them to talk about it with a sense of morality and ethics that doesn't also in the process ruin other people's lives. That's what this did for sure. Ruined some lives.